I propose that we end the world, but on our terms. An orchestrated apocalypse. One that will cleanse the earth of its population but leave its infrastructure and resources intact. It's been done once before, with great success. The chosen few will ride out the storm, not in an ark as in the book of Genesis, but in safety, underground. And when it's over, we will emerge onto a cleansed earth, one that we can then reboot in our image.
And just how do you intend to achieve this?
The means of our salvation are already at hand. I give to you the T-virus.
During my recent studies into immunology and virology to try and better understand what's going on with these viruses and the vaccines they're pushing, I discovered a paper written in 2017 by two Italian scientists, husband and wife, Gatti and Montanetti. And they have been testing vaccines since 2004. They've tested 44 vaccines in total. And they have found that these vaccines are contaminated with inorganic nanoparticles, including all sorts of things like heavy metals, lead, etc. This leads me to believe that vaccines have been causing immune responses for many years, which may be presenting as influenzas and other illnesses, and that the more of these symptoms that appear, the more of the vaccines given to try and prevent them. It appears to me that there's some sort of a endless loop between vaccines and illnesses. Vaccines cause illnesses, illnesses demand more vaccines. We really need to get to the bottom of this. However, during that research, I discovered something even more worrisome. In April, Bill Gates' Gavi published an article on their website stating that Marburg was the next big pandemic that we have to worry about. Marburg is a relatively rare hemorrhagic fever. We've only had 16 cases since 2005. What does Bill Gates and Gavi know that we don't? Why would this be a threat? Why would the World Health Organization, mainstream media be publishing articles about this rare disease? When I researched further, I found that they've already developed a PCR test for it. This is very worrying in that they can now prove that, like for COVID, that anybody might have Marburg with this test, and it would be hard, like the current PCR test, to disprove it. They've also published, I found that they published papers claiming that Marburg is spread by bats asymptomatically. This is something that's been disproven during the COVID pandemic. If you do not have symptoms, you do not have the virus, therefore you cannot spread it asymptomatically. There is no such thing as asymptomatic spread of a virus. That has now been accepted. However, they have published papers to the contrary. The most worrying development that I found is that they are fast-tracking a new ricin-rich vaccine called Rivax for Marburg. Rivax contains ricin, which is a toxic substance that was used in the terrorist attacks in the subways in Tokyo to kill a large number of people. Why would they put such a dangerous toxin into a vaccine? It's very, very strange and worrisome. But how would they start this pandemic of Marburg without actually spreading it? Quite simple. They've already started it. The vaccines injuries that we're seeing at the moment from COVID vaccines include bleeding and clots, which are very similar to hemorrhagic fever. When they give the booster shots to the people in the nursing homes and the hospitals who are prisoners, and to the children who will be in close contact in schools, they will cause further bleeds and clots, which will appear as hemorrhagic fever. They will test with their new PCR test. They will say that it's Marburg. This will explain the excess deaths that we're seeing in hospitals for them. It will be a cover-up. They will say that deaths in the hospital are not due to COVID vaccine injuries, they're due to Marburg. There will be a very, very large, sudden panic that will ensue. There will be mass hysteria like we never saw before. People will rush to get anything that will protect them. The Rivax vaccine will be rushed through and given as an experimental vaccine in the same way the COVID vaccines were given. However, one big difference to the Ricin vaccine is that the infrastructure is already in place and all the resources are there to deliver the Ricin vaccine in a very short period of time. They could achieve 100% coverage of the population in very little time. The Ricin in the vaccine will kill millions of billions of people very rapidly. There is no way of stopping it once it starts. The only way we can stop this Marburg epidemic from being touted by Bill Gates, Gavi, World Health Organization, and whoever else is behind it, is to stop taking the COVID vaccines. We must convince our friends, our relatives, everybody, that it is the wrong thing to do. It will make them sicker. What they must rely on is their natural immunity. Build it back up with vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, and all the other minerals that are necessary. If they become sick with COVID, we have ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, which are very effective. We do not need a vaccine which is causing hemorrhagic fever symptoms. We must stop it immediately. If we do not stop it, we will be looking at an alleged Marburg pandemic being touted, and that will be the excuse for issuing the Ricin-based vaccine, which will kill billions. This is an urgent quest to try and stop this before it starts. Please spread this video to everybody. I have posted all the research on lewrockwell.com in relation to what I've spoken to here. Please read it. Please do your own research. You will see what I'm saying is true. You will also note that I have nothing to gain by saying what I'm saying. All I have is to lose. I'm sure my job is in jeopardy in the hospital, and God knows what else is in jeopardy. But I feel so strongly about this that we must do something before they release this Marburg scare, an excuse to inject people with ricin toxic chemicals. Please spread this video as soon as you can.
Okay, this video I'm about to upload has been heavily censored. I've tried uploading it before. Now I got a lot more followers. I think people need to see this video. I'm going to heavily edit it down and maybe even take the sound out of it, and I'll kind of explain what's going on, and I'll tell you what terms to look up on your own so that you can do this on your own.
Because we're at Rice, we had plenty of nanotubes around, so we decided to use nanotubes, and what we discovered was that these nanotubes can actually string together and form wires by themselves under this electric field.
This fundamental idea of force acting at a...
Now what you guys just saw, if the sound gets cut out, whatever, but what you guys just saw is a scientific phenomenon known as Tesla phoresis. Now what they can do is they can turn on a radio or electrical signal in the air, or radio signal, or cell phone tower, let's say, and the nanotubes can self-assemble wires and make little circuitry connections. And if you guys have been following my videos at all, you've seen that there's definitely graphene oxide in the shots, and graphene oxide is used to make these nanotubes as well. So who's to say they couldn't just flip a switch and, you know, something self-assembles inside your body and you're no longer even the same person? Just a thought.
And the CDC actually came out themselves the other day and they said, oh, we've decided that the PCR is an unsuitable test to determine for COVID, and we want you to use a couple of new tests we've figured out. Well, no, we don't want to use your new test. The important part about what you said is that the PCR is not a suitable test, which is what we've been saying since the very beginning. And just that statement itself, the PCR is not a suitable test, well, okay, you've locked the whole world down over the results of these unsuitable tests, which we told you were unsuitable right at the beginning, and Carrie Mullis told you were unsuitable when he invented the thing. So, you know, you've locked the whole world down under false pretenses. That's basically what that is. That's an admission that they have locked the entire world down using a test which is not a test. It's not a suitable test. The graphene, there's been tests and there's been experiments that have been done on graphene-based neuromodulation technology and brain-controlling biocircuits using AI-powered graphene. Yeah, graphene's interesting stuff, folks, and how graphene reacts when it's exposed to electromagnetic frequencies is even more interesting.
Смотрите, что будет происходить. Вот он, вызов пошел. Смотрите, что теперь. Ну. Вызов идет, если вы можете смотреть, видите. Такая вот непонятная хреновина. Интересно, в голове у нас то же самое творится. Когда я первый раз это обнаружил, даже страшно стало. Ну все, я выключаю. Вот, пожалуйста, все. Так не действует ничего. Как только мы опять звоним. Ну, вот он пошел вызов. И вот он, пожалуйста.
Black goo is often depicted in movies, TV shows, music videos, commercials, and video games. It even makes the news from time to time.
Black goo, or something resembling it, is found in the Indian River Lagoon. What is it? And is more on the way. News Channel 5's Megan McRoberts, part of the largest news team on the Treasure Coast, and she joins us live from Jensen Beach. Megan.
Michael, tonight environmental experts are trying to figure out exactly what washed up ashore here on Hutchinson Island over the weekend. A viewer sent us a photo he took on Sunday of what appeared to be a black gooey substance.
Cheryl McKenzie walked outside her Farmington Hills condo only to find her white Lincoln MKS covered in this blackish, bluish, green gook that rained down on her neighborhood.
Then I started looking, I said, wow. And I walked up and down the street, and in the street it was covered. I went to each unit, it was covered.
From the driveways and walkways to the windows and roof, Plum Grove Lane is splattered with this stuff. It happened 3 times recently, and no one knows what it is. Yuri Voldman tried to wash it off his SUV.
And I have no idea where it's coming from. And sometimes in the morning, sometimes during the day. I thought maybe, birds flying.
I think that it might be something from one of the airplanes. They might have dumped something out because the airplanes fly kind of low in this area. But we're really concerned. We're concerned that it might be toxic.
So what are they trying to tell us? What is this black, mysterious substance? Well, I have formed some ideas, and I will admit now that this video is speculation on my part based on what I've discovered during my research on the subject. I want to start by pointing out the gray goo theory. Gray goo theory is the idea that, in the future, self-replicating nanotechnology will consume anything and everything until the environment and everything in it is completely affected. This theory was proposed in 1986. What's weird is I was doing research on transhumanism, and I stumbled across this website called aleph.se. I'll put a link in the description. And it has a list of transhumanist terms along with their definition. Now, there's tons of stuff on this list, but I want to highlight in particular blue goo, golden goo, green goo, gray goo, of course, khaki goo, pink goo. Pink goo reminds me of Ghostbusters. Red goo. And finally, uber goo. So anyway, I found that intriguing, and it all has to do with transhumanism, nanotechnology, programmable matter, and so on. It may even tie into chemtrails and Morgellons disease. But we'll get to that. Let's just start with programmable matter.
Shape-shifting material that can transform itself in real time, changing colors and shape on demand. It sounds like special effects you would see in a sci-fi movie, but this is no illusion. Researchers at Intel teamed up with the academic community to make what they call programmable matter.
The basic idea is the notion that you could have a material that could change its shape or change its physical properties just by reconfiguring itself.
Forget about designing something in flat 2 dimensions. What about creating a 3D prototype of anything, even a car?
Open the doors, kick the tires, peek inside to see what it looks like. fit little dolls of, people inside of it.
This space-age stuff is like putty in your hands. Programmable matter is still in the early developmental stages. But Intel's Andrew Chin says one day we may be able to morph objects on demand to fit our human needs.
So for example, I have a Bluetooth earpiece and it fits me great, but then when I put on my sunglasses, it doesn't fit anymore. Wouldn't it be nice if it could change its shape subtly, right, to all of a sudden match that? All of these things are possible with programmable matter. We are definitely on the edge of discovery with this one.
Gary Tuckman, CNN, Atlanta.
Forget phone calls, forget video calls. I would be able to create a full three-dimensional Claytronic version of myself that could appear in front of you and give you a handshake or even a hug. The entertainment applications for this alone are astounding. Imagine playing a video game and the characters literally leap off the screen and become three-dimensional creatures in your home. And if this stuff becomes plentiful and cheap enough, we could have objects disassembling and reassembling themselves everywhere. Let's say I've got a bunch of friends coming over for dinner and I want to make sure I got enough seats for them. Well, I could use Claytronics to build the furniture right then and there. Then, when my guests leave, I could have it disassemble back into those individual catums and go into a vat for storage.
Programmable matter is already becoming a reality, and we've been shown this stuff in Hollywood movies forever. Yet another instance of predictive programming. So now let's move on to smart dust.
This powder-sized chip, and that's a salt crystal, so this is a small thing, is something called the Mu chip from Hitachi. It's the smallest commercially available RFID system in the world and can be pulse-powered by radio waves. It doesn't require a battery. You can literally scatter this stuff like dust or embed it into a sheet of paper. And you know what the really interesting thing about this technology is? This was commercially released 10 years ago. So, the inevitability of smart dust. So what is smart dust? Well, smart dust, of course, isn't a new concept. It originated with DARPA back in the 90s. And it's general purpose computing, sensors, wireless networking, all bundled up into millimeter scale sensor modes, drifting in the air currents, flecks of computing power settling on your skin, ingested, monitoring you inside and out.
But in the future, every square inch of every city will be alive with intelligence. Because every street and every building will have a network of microcomputers built right into them. Dr. Chris Piester calls it smart dust.
A smart dust particle, or mote, is a wireless sensor with sensing, computation, communication, and power in one package.
These all-in-one microcomputers will be small, very small.
The size of a mote today is about the size of a grain of rice. And we've shown that we can make the circuitry small enough and light enough that eventually it will be possible to make things that are on a sub-millimeter size scale.
Tiny specks of computer smart dust will form a vast invisible network that can help manage the infrastructure of even the largest city.
Smart cities in the future will take this low-power, inexpensive, small technology and basically distribute it everywhere.
These tiny computers record information about their surroundings, information they can send to other computers or to you. Smart dust on the tracks will monitor your commuter train so you know if it's running late. Potholes will be able to report themselves and warn your car, and you'll never have to wait for a radio traffic report again.
They're monitoring the flow of traffic and giving you alerts about what route is the right way to go to keep the traffic moving.
Bridges will get a coating of smart dust particles that can warn us when they detect stress fractures, helping avoid deadly collapses. But smart dust will also allow buildings and streets to recognize you and respond accordingly.
I think increasingly, the environment will respond to who we are and adapt in consequence.
The city will know where you are if you want it to.
Your workplace will know you. Smart dust at the entrance will boot up your computer. And smart dust embedded in the elevator doors will automatically ring your floor.
Smart dust is going to sense the environment and allow us to improve the way that we live our lives.
No matter how we live in the future city, it will be radically different.
New research in Britain has raised concerns about the potentially harmful effect of nanoparticles. The emerging technology is used in a variety of medicines and even sunscreen. The research found that the small particles could damage the DNA of cells. They're tiny microscopic particles which can store and release drugs in specific areas of the body. As a result, nanoparticles are increasingly being used in medicine and surgery. But because the particles are so small, there's been growing concerns about potential toxicity.
There's an emerging sort of body of evidence that says that for some particles of certain scales and of certain materials, that there are potential health risks.
New British research has added to that concern. It found nanoparticles could damage cells without even entering them. Scientists found the particles change the function of cells and how they communicate with other cells.
What this study shows is that even with a barrier between the blood supply where the nanoparticles are and cells, that there can be damage to cells, and not just a bit of damage but significant damage to the DNA.
One of the biggest areas of concerns has been the use of nanoparticles in sunscreen. A review this year by the Therapeutic Goods Administration found sunscreen was safe and that the particles didn't penetrate skin cells. If trends in science continue, there's no doubt nanoparticles will be used more and more.
We really need to do fairly sophisticated studies of the toxicity of nanoparticles before we use them extensively in humans.
The TGA says it will monitor scientific literature should any tangible safety concerns be identified. Sophie Scott, ABC News.
We have to realize that as robots become more sophisticated, more intelligent, there is a chance that they could become very, very superior to us, in which case we should think about merging with them.
Alright, so smart dust is a reality, and it's possible that they are already distributing smart dust by way of chemtrails. And real quick, chemtrails are admittedly true, and many people don't believe they exist still. But they most certainly do, and I can prove it in 20 seconds with simple observations. 1. Sometimes chemtrail planes fly parallel to normal planes, and the normal plane clearly shows regular condensation trails. And 2. Sometimes they turn off the chemtrails and turn them back on in midair. So this leads me to my next point. Let's have a look at Morgellons disease.
Good evening. Tonight we're going to focus on a controversial and mysterious condition known as Morgellons. There are thousands who say they suffer from its bizarre symptoms, but there are many in the worlds of science and medicine who believe that it's all in the mind. Well, now the government has weighed in, acknowledging that people are suffering and accepting the need for proper scientific investigation. So the Centers for Disease Control today announced that it would begin a new in-depth study to try and explain this strange condition. My co-anchor Cynthia McFadden reports.
Mary began poring through the medical literature, looking for clues. What she discovered was a 17th century reference to a strange disease with so-called harsh hairs called Morgellons. She named the strange fibers Morgellons disease and put the information on a website. Since then, more than 4,500 people have contacted Mary, claiming they too have Morgellons-type symptoms.
If you do a literature search in the medical literature, there is no Morgellons disease. The skin symptoms fit perfectly with the same group of individual symptoms that we saw in patients with delusions of parasitosis.
Delusions of parasitosis. In other words, it's all in their heads. And despite today's announcement, many doctors remain skeptical that this is a real medical condition at all.
They've pre-decided that these symptoms are too impossible to be real, so they've come to this conclusion that it's a delusion.
Randy Wymore is not a medical doctor, but he is a scientist at Oklahoma State University. He started out as a skeptic too, but years ago, after taking a closer look at the fibers, he changed his mind. And he says other doctors might also, if only they would look.
And the few that have seen patients often have never actually gotten down with either a handheld microscope or a dermatoscope and looked at the patient's skin to see these fibers.
On the day we filmed this, Wymore's colleague, Dr. Rhonda Casey, examined that chronic sore on Drew's lip, which, after 5 years, still had not healed.
Plain as day, definitely a fiber. There are fibers there, and I have never seen fibers in any other child's rash similar to this.
What are the symptoms, and what, from your view, from your studies, what exactly is Morgellons disease?
My view of Morgellons is basically the result of industrialization. The list of symptoms is extremely long. It's almost similar to like a fungal overload, pathogenic overload, and there's so many related symptoms. Some of the more prominent ones being the body actually growing these fibrils or hairs, the body producing artifacts of some kind, whether they're some people, I've even met a couple of people that are producing plant-like material growing out of their skin. There's actually these non-earthling type of insects being come out of their body. I mean, unbelievable stories that I would never have believed it unless I was standing in their house witnessing this. Hexagons, I mean, on our website, morgellonsresearchgroup.com, there's probably 1,000 pictures that you can see. They're real. It's unbelievable. It's like the science fiction channel come to life.
Absolutely, I agree with you, as well.
Can you guys see how all this might tie together? They could very well be distributing smart dust and many other things into our system using chemtrails, sunblock, lotion, other hygiene products, medicine, and even food and drink. Is this part of an ongoing plan to turn human beings into walking receivers that are dumbed down by toxins and filled with heavy metals? Robot zombie citizens that can easily be tracked and identified as they travel through the smart cities? Are we in the process of a full-on gray goo takeover? Well, I think so. That's why I made this video. This has been ODD. Thanks for watching.
In an old video from 1995, a theology professor named Pierre Gilbert warned of mandatory vaccines that would turn recipients into zombies. He speaks in French, so I will translate. In the biological destruction, there are the organized tempests on the magnetic fields. What will follow is the contamination of the bloodstreams of mankind, creating intentional infections. This will be enforced via laws that will make vaccination mandatory, and these vaccines will make possible to control people. The vaccines will have liquid crystals that will become hosted in the brain cells, which will become micro receivers of electromagnetic fields, where waves of very low frequencies will be sent. And through these low frequency waves, people will be unable to think. You'll be turned into a zombie. Don't think of this as a hypothesis. This has been done. Think of Rwanda. There isn't much information I could find about Pierre Gilbert, but what he said 26 years ago certainly rings true today. In 2016, The Guardian published Genetically engineered magnetoprotein remotely controls brain and behavior. Here we can see zebrafish larvae that have been injected with magneto being manipulated with magnetic fields. In March of 2020, Defense One published an article on how hydrogel biosensors are ready to be injected into people's bodies, funded by DARPA and Bill Gates. If you search magnetic nanoparticles, you will find several articles and videos explaining the so-called benefits of this invasive technology that can control parts of the human body via external frequencies. Livestock needs to be branded and tracked, and the enslavement of humanity is voluntary, which is why the so-called vaccines are voluntary. And sadly, there seems to be millions of people eagerly lining up to be state property.
Yeah, sure. Been in the mortality business for a long time, practiced international law around the world, including living and working in 2 communist countries and undoing the Soviet model economy. I understand who the players are in this genocide. I've done business with all of them, including the WHO. And when the Secretary of Defense illegally mandated the shots, he doesn't have the power to do that. I realized what this was all about, and I filed suit against them and raised a lot of issues, including the fact that everybody that's getting these shots are number one, exploratory laboratory animals, right? They're just test beds. And then number two, if you got the shots, the odds are, according to U.S. law, that you are owned by the patent holders. You're a new species called Homo borgenesis, and you are owned. That's the nature of what our case says today. One of the advantages of suing the DOD with this many service members that are upset about the mandates is we've ended up with about 500,000 whistleblowers who have provided us a whole lot of really good information. So everything you said is well supported in documents that we have, testimony that we have, and expert witnesses. So in recent times, I had sent you a number of documents that actually support what you said. And our biggest concern, the reason Doc Chambers and I are here today, is we work as a team to understand both the science and the legal ramifications. And what I wanted to impart to you is under 42 CFR Part 70 and 71, that's the enabling statute for Health and Human Services to assume power upon the declaration of a public health emergency. They've already done that, as you indicated, with the COVID crisis. That has resulted in the suspension of our Constitution. It's already happened. The next one is coming. In that statute, you will see that Marburg is already identified. You will note that the PrEP Act has a Marburg provision that allows for additional spending when invoked. The Health and Human Services has already invoked the Marburg provision, meaning they've already parted ways with money and spent it under the HHS enabling statute to build quarantine camps, amongst other things, throughout the United States. We interrupted 2, one of which was in Cochise County, Arizona, where they were going to build a $1.9 million facility that houses the now merged 4 branches under HHS. The judiciary, law enforcement, corrections, and public health are now all one and the same, and they're all housed in the same facility. So all of these quarantine centers are there. We understand that there could have been a Marburg release that Dr. Chambers will get into. We think that one has already happened. We know that Marburg is not particularly contagious, but it has extraordinarily high rate of fatality, and we know the mechanism by which this will be released, and that is inside of these shots that people already received, inside the lipid nanoparticles, the hydrogel, there exists pathogens inside of the particles that have not yet opened. Those pathogens are chimeric. They include E. coli Marburg, Ebola staphylococcus, and brewer's yeast, amongst others. We know that upon the broadcast from the 5G system that is now employed across the United States and the world for that matter, when they broadcast an 18 gigahertz signal for 1 minute, 3 different times as a pulse, it will cause those lipid nanoparticles to swell and release these pathogenic contents, thereby causing a Marburg epidemic that they've already spent the money on. It's already done, right? The Marburg epidemic, for purposes of the law, has happened, and now we just need the actual disaster to happen. And there's actually worse parts to it than that, including the 1p36 gene deletion that effectively will turn those poor people into zombies. As odd as that sounds, our government's preparing for that.
But the FEMA have already put out zombie commercials and CONOPS on that, correct?
That's correct. If you look at Con Plan 8888, Stratcom put that out in 2011. On page 2, they say, "Oh, this is just for examples, just for demonstration. You know, don't worry about it, so we don't offend other countries." The problem with that is, you look through that Con Plan, it's all about 5 different types of zombies. There isn't anything in there about opposition forces. There isn't anything about winning political battles or counterinsurgencies. It is only about a zombie apocalypse, defending it. And you will see that every NIMS compliant, practically, agency, or whether that's state, local, or federal, has already had their zombie apocalypse preparedness training. They've already done their practice. The CDC has had a zombie apocalypse preparedness website up for the last 5 years now. They've reduced it to a PDF cartoon. Even in the Amazon Web Services contract, the force majeure clause, I believe it's Article 41, states that we're not liable for damages in case there's a zombie apocalypse. This is coming, folks, and the serious adverse event report Pfizer put out post-marketing, they had put out as part of a FOIA. The number one serious adverse event was the 1p36 gene deletion. You look up the symptomology for that, it is the elimination of the frontal cortex and the propensity to bite. What's very odd about this is this was the symptom post-vaccination. That disease is a congenital disease. It means you're born with it. So how is it then possible that this is the number one serious adverse event from the Pfizer shots? It's here, folks. And then you got Dr. Chambers here to tell you I'm not just a raving lunatic.
No, these are both very serious, credentialed folks and patriots in their fields. I just met Doc Chambers, but just hearing his military resume impresses me. And Todd and I have known each other for quite some time. So, and I also now work in corporate competitive biotech intelligence only for the good guys. That's my company is GrinX, which is genetics, robotics, information, nanotechnology. Don't talk about that much, but it's very, so I have some understanding of what's going on here. And so the lipid fat is what encases the delivery, and then it is activated and released by pulsing the 18 gigahertz. Is that correct, Todd?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Think of the lipid nanoparticles as little bombers. What happened is the various manufacturers of these shots included 3 separate HIV proteins in each of them, including the AD5 adjuvant. The reason for that was to disarm people's immune systems so that those little fat bombers could go inside of the cell and deliver their payloads in order to reprogram the person's body to produce synthetic DNA. In this case, they call it S proteins. When they turn that Marburg switch on, it will be M proteins, and it will cause people to produce the Marburg pathogen themselves. First and foremost, from a documentary point of view and self-legal help, Vax Choice, VAXXchoice.com. There's a full repository of everything that we're talking about is there, and other things. Self-help legal documents, and if you sign up, you can get a daily update. There's no donation button. There's no nothing. We just put this out for people's benefit. Separately, there's truthforhealth.org. Dr. Lee Vliet is in charge of that, and she's put out a Marburg fact sheet along with some things that we can do to try and stop what's coming, or at least prevent it. Just like the COVID situation, there are medications that Dr. Chambers can talk about. There are therapeutics. Of course, the CDC got rid of those therapeutics in its advisory, saying only thing that you can do to treat Marburg is a vaccine. There's one actually already prepared for this. I think it's getting its emergency use authorization right now, which also tells us this is going to happen. Secondarily, yesterday we got information from a source, from a whistleblower, showing us that they are now training people on urban collection, isolation, and detention in reference to a public health emergency. So they're now training it. This training happens next week in South Carolina, once again in July. I'm sure that this is happening in more than one place. The United Nations has already hired people, specialists in quarantining that is on their payroll. That happened last year. I haven't seen if they've done it more recently. My point in telling you this, folks, is that we have tools to not fall for this again. There are therapeutic drugs that are available. I think one of them is called Fen-Ben in the 444 milligrams. And then I understand from talking to doctors in Africa that have treated this that ozone, either IV or insufflated, also tends to work. So I also have one whistleblower inside of FEMA who said that the plan is to scare the hell out of everybody and scare them into going to the quarantine centers because they don't think they can collect everybody by themselves. That the doors will be open, and then of course in there you will get your mandatory shot because you came in voluntarily. So what we'd like to do is help people understand, don't run to the FEMA camps because you're going to get one of these shots just like the COVID ones. And number two, you can treat this yourself. There's preparation you can do. And if we get the word out sufficiently, I think we can stop this like we did in Cochise County and like another lawyer friend of mine, Jamie Shear, did in New York. We got to get the word out. We got to stop this. Top of that, so yes, it's very insightful. Secondary to that is that upon the invocation of these emergency powers, which are now permanent, by the way, in all 50 states, there is never again going to be a constitution, and all of that power is being ceded in the WHO, now by contract. It was by charter, now it's by contract. So this is your one world government, all being created at one time with this particular emergency. Your rights as a human being are gone, by the way. There are two UN conventions, the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights and the International Convention on Human Rights, that says they cannot force you to do medical experiments. Guess what? Those don't count anymore. Your Constitution doesn't count anymore. We're in a position where we, the people, right, at a county level, and Dr. Chambers will talk about this, we take back our country from our own traitors in government, or we're done. We're done as a species. My biggest issue is this. The next shooter drop is coming, and then they will cause 30 million people to pour across our borders. Most of those will be enemy occupiers. Some are already housed on our military reservations as our military members are falling out because they were forced to get these shots. Others are prepared to walk in and take over. The law of war states that when alien occupiers take over substantial government functions, your nation is dead. That is happening as we speak right now, and we've got to take our country back now or it's never.
Well, thank you so much, Todd, and I'll probably have you guys both back on my cast next week or the week after that if you're available. This is really important. I'm going to ask Mike Adams and Bob Denny at Brighteon TV to write articles about this and get this out. It's really important, and thanks. And again, your website is, both of them?
So Vax Choice, VAXXchoice.com, and Truth for Health, that's not a 4 in there, Truth, FORHEALTH.org. Thank you, Jeffrey. I appreciate you having me.
I'm going to mention each of these points, then talk about them in greater detail. There are things you need to know. First, the Coconut Grove fly-in. Many of you were there. Then there's the Miami incident. Some of you were there. The CDC Zombie Apocalypse Preparedness Release. DHS released a fake zombie preparedness story. Then there's the recent purchases of large quantities of ammunition. About the Coconut Grove fly-in, Z-Teams 1, 2, and 3 cleaned down a zombie cell. That got a lot of public attention. Our cover story was that this was an urban assault exercise in preparation for the upcoming UN meeting. For now, our cover story is holding, but one got away. That led to the Miami incident. That should never have happened. About the Miami incident. Some of you were there. Our cover story was bath salts. That was blown when the autopsy results were leaked. There were no bath salts present. We're still dealing with the fallout, and we're investigating the leak. The CDC Zombie Apocalypse Preparedness Release, it was sent out against our wishes. Then they changed their story. This brought even more attention to it than if they'd just left it alone. Next, DHS released a fake zombie preparedness story, also against our wishes, but it's out there, so we're going to use it as our cover story. Next month, DHS is running a 1,000-person training exercise in San Diego. Z-Teams 2, 4, and 5 will be doing a cleanup operation in another part of the city at the same time. This gives us plausible deniability. I shouldn't have to stress how important this is. Make certain none of them get away.
So this is not a, so it's really not a vaccine legally, medically. This does not measure up to be a vaccine. It is a device.
Well, I guess the man who did most of the talking, he talked like a lawyer. You know, so he was using a lot of legal terminology and all of that, and I followed that. And then there was Dr. Judy Mikovits, you know, who is a scientific researcher who knows all about interferon and all the rest of it. But now, those are just people expressing their opinions about what the vaccine, so-called vaccine, is. But if anybody goes to the Moderna website itself, the Moderna company founded by Anthony Fauci, what do they say it is? And if you go to their website, what they say it is that this is an injectable operating system. So what is an injectable operating system? Well, what's an operating system that's in our phones and in our computers and other devices? It's what programmers can program. Okay, so then what is being injected into people called the vaccine is really a nano operating system that is programmable. And then along with that, that's one component of it. That's not the only component. In order to make that work, do you know what you have to do? Think now, man. Now, when we say nano, see, how small is that?
Extremely, nanoparticle, extremely small.
Okay, well, if we talk about what a meter is about like a yardstick, 3 feet in length. Okay, that's a yard. Most people have a concept of a meter. A nanometer is 1/billionth of a meter. A 1/billionth. So it's vanishingly small. So we're talking about something of that size that is an operating system like in a computer. It's miniaturization on steroids. Okay, so that's what's being injected. Now, here's an electronic component that is not living. That's not living tissue. We're made out of carbon-based molecules. This is silicon. So what we're talking about is the interface where silicon meets carbon. What is going to make that interface work? You have to have something on the embryonic level of cellular life that is so innocent and so pure. So that's why you have to have the fetal cells from aborted babies. That has to be a component in the so-called vaccine to allow the electronic components to merge with the biological component of a living cell. Then that makes that living cell attached to an electronic component that can be programmed and controlled from outside. And then the other part of it is what Dr. Mikovits was talking about. The mRNA is alien genetic code that gets injected into the cells and causes your cells to start making the S protein, the spike protein of the coronavirus itself. So it turns every cell in your body into a virus-making machine. Now, the coronavirus, the COVID-19, has 4 proteins. So the first vaccine gives you the S protein, and then there's 3 more proteins. That's why you have to get these so-called booster shots.
Right.
Because you have to be able to produce all 4 of the proteins to make up a complete coronavirus. So now what happens to a human being whose every cell is spilling out millions of viral particles? You become a walking disease. And that might be the description of a zombie. And I think we touched on that last week, that the CDC has already made emergency preparations for a zombie apocalypse. So how do they know that's coming? Unless this has already been pre-programmed, literally, within the cells of everybody who receives that operating system disguised as a vaccine.
Wow. So, for those who are listening, regardless of your age, regardless of your educational background, guess what? All of this, you can look it up. This is something that, this is not, some fantastic conversation where you can't check this out to see if this is real, and just to make sure with some of the young people, when you heard the word zombie, right? And zombie protocol of the CDC. Some of you all weren't part of the Instagram conversation that we had. And so we just want to make sure you understand that this is not something from the movie. This is actually real. When you go to google.com, just check this out. All you do is type up, you should be able to see this, zombie protocol CDC, and they have it right here, zombie preparedness. Wonder why zombie apocalypse and zombie preparedness continue to live or walk dead on the CDC website, where they give you the one-on-one on preparing yourself for a zombie attack. Does the CDC really have a zombie plan? Yes, it does. And so when you go to the CDC website, it gives you how to prepare for a zombie attack. This is a one-on-one on how to prepare. You see this Center for Disease Control and Prevention. There are all kinds of emergencies out there that we can prepare for. Take a zombie apocalypse, for example. That's right, I said zombie apocalypse. You may laugh now, but when it happens, you'll be happy you read this. Maybe you'll even learn a thing or two about how to prepare for a real emergency. So they give you a zombie survival guide and go into the better safe than sorry and the type of things you need to have stocked up for your zombie preparation. So we just want to make sure that you all understand that as we're talking about this, we're dealing with actual facts. You know, we're dealing with truth without boundaries so that we can holistically help one another to survive and grow, because we got to grow from this. And as we learn, maybe we'll produce a real community.
Now the takeaway point is, I mean, you're making all the right points, but the overall takeaway point is don't become one of those zombies. Yeah. You see, and how do they make a normal human being into a zombie-like creature with those vaccines, with those nanobots in them, and the embryonic cells from aborted fetuses? Now, a lot of religious people, you see, they actually have religious laws against eating human beings. Right. Now, some of the Catholic bishops have objected to the vaccine, even though the Pope says, go ahead and take it. See, so there's a lot of controversy in all of this. A lot of people are confused. So what I tell people is listen to everybody, but then you have to think for yourself because it's your life. And there's no going back. You see, once they inject you, how do you take it back if it is a mistake? And think how often Anthony Fauci, remember, he founded Moderna. Think how often in the last year he's flip-flopped on just about everything. Suppose he tells you to take a vaccine today and then tomorrow he changes his mind and says, I made a mistake. The science tells me that you shouldn't have done that. Now you can take a mask on and you can put it on and you take it off as many times as you want. But what about a vaccine that's been injected into the very cells of your body? How are you going to get rid of that?
Very difficult to detox that. One of the questions that came up to distinguish DNA from mRNA. What is mRNA and how does it differ from DNA?
Okay, DNA, that's a very good question. DNA is just an abbreviation for a much longer name, deoxyribonucleic acid. That's what DNA stands for. Now, deoxy, see, that's a Latin root. If you trace its meaning, it means God. So deoxyribo. In the Semitic languages, ribo is the same as rabbi. Or in the Arabic, we say Rab. It means the master, the Lord. So here we have deoxyribo, God, Lord, and master, nucleic acid. Nucleic means at the center, and acid is like chemical fire. So deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA. What does it mean? God, Lord and Master. The fire at the center of my being. So what does the Bible say about it? It says, in the beginning was the Word. And the Word was what? The Word was God. And the Word was with God. Then it says, after many days, the Word became flesh and dwelt among men. Well, see, that's DNA. So now, the DNA basically is the God molecule that actually is the blueprint for how to make a human being. Every molecule, every protein, every substance in your body was coded for, programmed for, in the DNA. But how did it get expressed as a protein, say in muscle or bone? How did that get expressed physically out of a word? How did it manifest into flesh? That's the messenger RNA. See, the mRNA, the small case m stands for messenger. So it's almost theological. If DNA is the God molecule, well, how does God communicate with the world? He sends messengers, prophets, teachers, with a message. So in the cell of a body, okay, suppose some injury took place. So, suppose you cut your skin, like I got a little thing here. Okay, so a message went to the cell from the DNA. Oh, there was a protein that got destroyed in some cell. We need 300 of those units to replace what got destroyed. So the messenger RNA comes out with that message to code for that protein. And then the cell gets busy and makes 300 copies of that exact protein, fixes whatever the injury was. We call that healing. We take it for granted. But how did it happen? The DNA was in charge and gave a command to the messenger RNA to go make a protein. It's creation taking place at every minute, every second. Why? Because it's God that's at the very center of our being. So what does the enemy to God and the righteous want to do? He wants to send in an alien word, an alien messenger RNA. Not the word of God coming from the divine, but coming from the outside, literally coming from Bill Gates. So what kind of message does Bill Gates want to send into your cells? A 2 or 3 generational genocidalists, eugenicists. He's hated black people, even his father, his grandfather. They all believed in eugenics, population reduction, but they didn't have the means to carry it out. And so now here's little Billy. He's got the means in his hands to actually carry out the depopulation agenda of his father and his grandfather.
We're dealing with history.
We'll have to prepare for the next one. That, I'd say is will get attention this time.
So, that reminds me of going back to the vaccine.
A few countries that have almost avoided the epidemic entirely, like Taiwan, New Zealand, Australia, they took their experience and actually prepared, and so they moved a lot faster. So we'll have to prepare for the next one. That, I'd say is will get attention this time.
So, that reminds me of going back to the vaccine.
A few countries that have almost avoided the epidemic entirely, like Taiwan, New Zealand, Australia, they took their experience and actually prepared, and so they moved a lot faster. So we'll have to prepare for the next one. That, I'd say is will get attention this time.
So, that reminds me of going back to the vaccine.
A few countries that have almost avoided the epidemic entirely, like Taiwan, New Zealand, Australia, they took their experience and actually prepared, and so they moved a lot faster. So we'll have to prepare for the next one. That, I'd say is will get attention this time.
So, that reminds me of going back to the vaccine.